Have you ever witnessed the ascent of the incompetent, a spectacle that defies all logic and rattles your very soul? Have you watched as individuals whose flaws and failures are as clear as daylight climb the ladders of power, from the tyrants etched in the annals of history to the billionaires shaping our world today? You see them make reckless, destructive decisions, yet somehow they only ascend higher. Their blunders are paraded for all to see, a grand theater of folly, yet a profound silence falls when it comes to stopping them. It feels like a cosmic joke, a cruel trick played on a loop by the universe itself. You are not alone in this feeling. It is a dissonance that has echoed through the hearts of awakened souls for centuries. But I need you to listen closely now, for what if I told you that this is not chaos? What if this isn't madness at all, but a meticulously crafted design, a hidden universal law operating right before our eyes? Understanding this sacred secret will forever change the way you perceive the world and the nature of power itself. If this message already resonates with a truth deep within you, show your alignment by liking this video, subscribing for more truths, and share your own experiences in the comments below. Let the collective know you are awake by simply writing, "I see the pattern." This isn't just a modern phenomenon. It is a timeless principle, a brutal, cold logic hidden just beneath the surface of the chaos we observe. This is a strategy, a spiritual and psychological mechanism crafted long before our time, a truth whispered by one of the most controversial yet clairvoyant minds in political history, Machiavelli. He was the one who dared to pull back the curtain and reveal the raw, unfiltered machinery of power. He saw with startling clarity that power does not anoint the wise, the virtuous, or the most capable. No, the universe of human interaction, in its current state of consciousness, rewards something far more primal, far more potent in its ability to manipulate the collective. It rewards the perfect illusion of wisdom. And once you truly grasp this dark mechanism, once you understand the subtle energies at play, you will never again look at leaders, at institutions, or at the world itself in the same way. Today, we descend into this uncomfortable secret, this truth that has been hiding in plain sight. We will explore the disturbing psychological and spiritual forces that allow the foolish to not only rise, but to outsmart and ultimately rule over the wise. Our journey begins in the tempestuous landscape of the early 16th century, amidst the chaotic political battles of Renaissance Italy. It was here that a man named Niccolo Machiavelli, a brilliant diplomat and observer of human nature, found himself cast out from the world he knew best, the world of politics. Once a respected figure in the Republic of Florence, his fortunes crumbled when a new ruling family seized control. Falsely accused of conspiracy, he was thrown into the darkness of a prison cell, subjected to torture, and finally exiled to the quiet solitude of the countryside. He was stripped of his influence, his purpose, and his dignity. Yet, it was in this crucible of forced isolation, away from the noise and deception of the court, that Machiavelli was gifted with a profound clarity. It was here that he penned the work that would etch his name into history forever, The Prince. Unlike the thinkers of his time who spun fantasies of ideal societies and virtuous leaders, Machiavelli shattered these illusions with a force that still reverberates today. He did not write about how rulers should behave. He wrote about how they do behave. His philosophy was cold, brutal, and deeply unsettling, for it revealed a core truth about the dance of power. When it comes to acquiring and maintaining influence, morality is often optional, and the appearance of truth frequently matters more than the truth itself. At the very heart of his thinking lies a chilling observation, a spiritual law of perception that echoes across the centuries with unnerving accuracy. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Let that sink into your soul. In other words, perception is power. Reality is secondary." Machiavelli understood a fundamental aspect of the human condition. By nature, most human beings are not seekers of truth. They are believers in appearance. They are drawn not to substance, but to shadow. The collective consciousness does not choose leaders based on a deep examination of their moral character or the genuine resonance of their wisdom. No, they follow the ones who project the most powerful frequency of confidence, the ones who appear strong, the ones who radiate an aura of absolute certainty. Even if that certainty is a carefully constructed illusion, a mask hiding a void of true understanding. This ancient warning reveals a fundamental crack in the very foundation of leadership, a deep vulnerability within the human psyche itself, a flaw that manipulators, demagogues, and charismatic fools have masterfully exploited since the dawn of time. It is not the most capable who rise to the throne of influence. It is those who have mastered the divine art of seeming capable. Look around you today. When you observe our modern political figures, our corporate executives, our social media icons who command the devotion of millions despite clear and repeated displays of incompetence, you are witnessing Machiavelli's prophecy manifest in real time. You are seeing the triumph of surface over substance, the victory of style over wisdom. You are watching as the frequency of confidence consistently overshadows the vibration of true competence. Machiavelli saw this coming 500 years ago, and today we are living in a world that proves his grim assessment correct more than ever before. It is a tempting and comforting belief that intelligence naturally leads to leadership, that the wisest and most insightful minds will inevitably rise to guide societies toward a brighter future. We want to believe in a meritocracy of the soul. But Machiavelli and the unyielding march of history itself tell a far darker, more complex story. In the brutal arena of power, a place often governed by lower vibrational energies, genuine intelligence can frequently be a curse, not a blessing. The very traits that define genuinely intelligent leaders, deep thinking, self-awareness, and a profound understanding of moral nuance, are the exact qualities that render them vulnerable in ruthless environments. Think about it. While a wise mind carefully weighs consequences, contemplates the intricate web of ethical dilemmas, and perceives the staggering complexity in every situation, the world often rewards the very opposite. It rewards boldness without doubt, certainty without nuance, simplicity over complexity. True intelligence, the kind that leads to awakening, breeds a sacred hesitation. It forces a leader to pause, to think deeply, to acknowledge the vast limits of their own knowledge. But in a world where certainty is so often mistaken for competence, such thoughtful hesitation is perceived as weakness. This is the tragic mismatch, the cosmic paradox, and nowhere is it more visible than in the story of Socrates. Socrates, arguably one of the greatest thinkers in human history, championed a life of relentless questioning and profound self-examination. He famously declared, "I know that I know nothing," a statement not of ignorance, but of the highest wisdom, for it recognized the vast, immeasurable ocean of human ignorance that surrounds our tiny island of knowledge. Yet, despite his brilliance, despite his divine mission to awaken the minds of Athens, Socrates was not celebrated as a leader. He was condemned. He was branded a corrupter of youth, and ultimately sentenced to death by the very democracy he so desperately tried to enlighten. His wisdom, his humility, his constant questioning of authority, these were seen as threats to the simple, established order. Now, compare this to the populist figures who have marched across the stage of history. They are the ones who rise to power not by offering complex, nuanced truths, but by providing simple, absolute answers to a confused and fearful public. Where Socrates offered the divine gift of doubt, populists offer the comforting illusion of certainty. Where wisdom humbly admits, "I could be wrong," foolishness shouts from the rooftops, "I alone am right." The reality of this dynamic is unsettling, but it is rooted in our deepest psychology. In the great competition for influence, those who project an unwavering confidence, even when it is completely devoid of substance, will often defeat those who humbly acknowledge the profound complexity of reality. And modern science gives us a clear lens through which to view this phenomenon. A controversial but groundbreaking study published in the Journal of Applied Psychology found that intelligence correlates positively with leadership effectiveness, but only up to a certain point. Specifically, leadership effectiveness increases with IQ up to a score of around 120. Beyond that threshold, additional intelligence can actually decrease the emergence of leadership. Why? Because highly intelligent individuals often struggle to communicate their complex, multi-layered ideas to a general audience. They can seem aloof, overly analytical, confusing, or simply out of touch, even when their insights are profoundly correct. Meanwhile, simpler, more confident voices cut through the noise with clear, bold, and easily digestible messages. Messages that people can quickly understand and rally behind. From a psychological standpoint, the explanation for this is as simple as it is devastating. Human beings are cognitive misers. Our brains, through millions of years of evolution, are wired to conserve mental energy. We naturally prefer simplicity over complexity, certainty over ambiguity, and clear, black and white answers over the messy and demanding shades of gray. When we are faced with nuanced truths that require real effort and energy to understand, many of us will instinctively turn away. We turn toward the leaders who offer easy, comforting illusions. This is precisely why, in moments of great crisis or uncertainty, the world rarely turns to the philosopher king, the one who speaks in careful probabilities and cautious wisdom. Instead, it follows the loudest voice, the one promising salvation in a single certain stroke. This dynamic is perfectly encapsulated by the Dunning-Kruger Effect, a cognitive bias that reveals a dark glitch in human cognition. The less people know about a subject, the more likely they are to believe they are experts in it. This psychological phenomenon shows that incompetence doesn't just breed mistakes, it breeds a powerful, and often seductive, overconfidence. In simple terms, the less someone knows, the less they realize how much they don't know. They lack the very metacognitive skills needed to recognize their own ignorance. As a result, they project an aura of false certainty, an illusion of mastery. And in a world where certainty is so often mistaken for confidence, and confidence is mistaken for competence, this illusion can be a devastatingly effective tool for gaining power. Think of the stark contrast this creates. Those who are truly skilled, the genuine experts, tend to doubt themselves. They are acutely aware of the vastness of what they don't understand. They hesitate, they question, they refine. Meanwhile, the fool barrels forward with the supreme confidence that only true ignorance can provide, and the crowd, desperate for a beacon in the fog, follows. As William Shakespeare wrote centuries before Dunning and Kruger put it into academic terms, "The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool." In the brutal game of leadership selection, it is not always the smartest who win. It is almost always the most confident. Consider the meteoric rise of Adam Neumann, the charismatic founder of WeWork. Despite building a company on incredibly shaky business fundamentals, Neumann captivated investors, employees, and the media with his unwavering vision and limitless self-belief. He didn't just sell office space. He promised a revolution in how humanity would live and work together. He spoke with absolute certainty, projecting an image of genius and inevitability. Billions of dollars flooded into WeWork based on his vision alone. But beneath the surface, the business model was deeply flawed, and eventually, reality caught up. WeWork's valuation collapsed almost overnight, exposing the dangerous gap between confidence and competence. Yet for years, Neumann's overconfidence wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated. It created an illusion so powerful that even the most experienced investors and analysts ignored the warning signs that were staring them in the face. This disturbing pattern is not an accident. It is the natural outcome of systems that lack strong feedback loops. Scientific studies back up what history has repeatedly shown. A 2020 study, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, found that individuals who displayed higher levels of confidence, regardless of their actual competence, were more likely to be perceived as leaders by their peers. Groups tend to reward those who appear certain, even if that certainty is completely unfounded. This happens because human beings are deeply wired to seek clarity and direction, especially in complex or threatening situations. A confident fool can seem far more appealing than a hesitant genius, simply because certainty feels safe, even when it is a complete illusion. This primal craving for certainty is not a minor flaw in our programming. It is a profound vulnerability, one that skilled and sometimes manipulative leaders have long exploited. When faced with fear, people do not follow the most intelligent voice in the room. They follow the voice that offers the clearest, most confident answer, even if that answer is dangerously, catastrophically wrong. Take, for example, the communication around climate change. Real climate scientists, those deeply immersed in the data and the inherent scientific uncertainty, often speak in cautious, probabilistic terms. There is a high probability, multiple models suggest. There are trade-offs involved. Their language reflects their intellectual honesty. It acknowledges the immense complexity of planetary systems, the uncertainty of precise predictions, and the difficulty of finding perfect solutions. But this very honesty can be politically fatal. In contrast, populist figures often present climate issues in black and white absolutes. It's a hoax. There's nothing to worry about. Technology will fix everything without any sacrifice. These messages are emotionally satisfying. They provide certainty. They offer an escape from fear. And so, despite lacking any substantive basis, these simple narratives often win more trust and belief than the nuanced, difficult truths of actual science. The uncomfortable reality is that when faced with complexity, many people don't want the real answer. They want the comforting one. Even among the highly educated, the cognitive bias towards simplicity persists. A fascinating experiment conducted at Yale University showed that when participants were presented with complex mathematical data about political issues, their ability to correctly interpret that data was heavily influenced by their prior political beliefs. Shockingly, the most mathematically skilled participants showed the strongest bias. They didn't use their intelligence to find the truth. They used their superior cognitive abilities to more effectively justify what their emotions and tribal affiliations already wanted them to believe. This finding shattered a comforting myth. More intelligence doesn't automatically lead to better judgment. Without emotional discipline and a conscious commitment to truth, even the smartest minds become powerful tools for rationalizing deeply biased conclusions. In other words, when certainty is the desired emotional state, intelligence becomes a servant of emotion, not a guardian of truth. This love for simple answers opens the door to black and white thinking, a dangerous cognitive shortcut that poisons public discourse. Leaders who offer absolute solutions, only I can fix it, gain massive psychological power over those who feel lost and afraid. The more complex and overwhelming the world becomes, the more desperately people yearn for the deceptive comfort of simplicity, and the more vulnerable they become to charismatic figures who promise that clarity, no matter how disconnected from reality those promises might be. Machiavelli understood that perception matters more than truth. Modern psychology has simply confirmed it at a deeper, neurological level. In a world drowning in complexity, the loudest, simplest, and most certain voice wins, not because it is right, but because it offers a moment of psychological relief. And until we recognize this vulnerability within ourselves, until we cultivate a collective appreciation for nuance and complexity, we will remain easy prey for those who masterfully exploit it. So, if perception often beats reality in the pursuit of power, then morality real. Genuine morality is often a liability. Machiavelli knew this harsh truth well. In one of his most infamous statements from The Prince, he wrote, "It is necessary for a prince who wishes to maintain his position to learn how not to be good." He wasn't suggesting that rulers must always be evil. He was issuing a stark warning that those bound too tightly to the ideals of honesty, fairness, and virtue would inevitably lose to those willing to break the rules when necessary. In the brutal world of power dynamics, ethical leaders handicap themselves. Their commitment to higher principles restricts their options their ruthless rivals are more than willing to exploit. Consider the stark contrast between Cicero and Julius Caesar in ancient Rome. Cicero, a brilliant orator and a champion of republican ideals, believed in the rule of law, rational debate, and ethical governance. He clung to the hope that reason and virtue could preserve the Roman Republic. Caesar, on the other hand, understood power in purely Machiavellian terms. He crossed forbidden boundaries, made ruthless alliances, and seized control by any means necessary, including the fateful act of crossing the Rubicon with his army, an act of outright rebellion. The outcome was a grim reflection of Machiavelli's principle. Cicero's fate? He was assassinated by his political rivals after failing to save the republic he so dearly loved. Caesar's fate? He became dictator for life, until his own assassination years later, but not before fundamentally reshaping Rome forever. The lesson is brutal, but it is clear. In a world of wolves, the sheep are devoured, not honored. This same pattern tragically repeats itself in today's corporate environments. Research from the University of British Columbia reveals a disturbing trend. Individuals with psychopathic traits, lack of empathy, superficial charm, manipulativeness are disproportionately represented in senior leadership positions. Their ruthlessness allows them to make cold, calculated decisions without being paralyzed by empathy or moral hesitation. Meanwhile, ethical managers who worry about fairness, long-term consequences, and employee well-being often find themselves sidelined, outmaneuvered, or completely burned out. This isn't merely anecdotal. It's a consistent outcome of what game theorists call the race to the bottom. In any competitive system, if one player adopts ruthless, unethical tactics and succeeds, others feel an immense pressure to adopt similar strategies just to survive. Over time, ethical constraints erode, not because good people have disappeared, but because the system itself has begun to reward those willing to cross moral lines. And so, morality becomes a weakness, not by its inherent nature, but because of how fiercely competitive environments punish it. It's easy to despair at this dynamic, to see it as an unbreakable cycle. But understanding it does not mean abandoning morality. It means recognizing that power structures often favor those unburdened by ethical limits, and it means consciously working to design systems, where possible, that resist rewarding such behavior. Machiavelli didn't celebrate ruthlessness. He simply revealed a truth that polite society prefers to ignore. Goodness alone rarely wins. Strategy, resilience, and sometimes uncomfortable compromises are necessary to survive and to lead. Once a foolish leader is in power, they rarely leave their throne by chance or goodwill. They understand, whether instinctively or strategically, that their very survival depends on surrounding themselves not with the best and the brightest, but with the most loyal and the least threatening. This is where the principle of homophily, the tendency of individuals to associate with others similar to themselves, plays a major, destructive role. Foolish leaders feel more comfortable, more secure, around those who think and act just like them. Smart, critical, and independent subordinates make them feel exposed, inadequate, and threatened. This links directly to what is known as competence threat theory, which posits that insecure leaders actively perceive highly competent individuals as existential threats to their own position. Instead of valuing and elevating talent, they instinctively suppress it, pushing away anyone who might someday outshine or challenge them. Over time, this creates isolated pockets, entire islands of incompetence, where independent thought is punished and mediocrity is rewarded. And here is the deeper tragedy. Once these structures are in place, they become self-sustaining. Weak leaders promote even weaker successors. Bad decisions are allowed to compound. Entire organizations, governments, and even societies slowly begin to decay, not because of a single catastrophic failure or an outside enemy, but because of a creeping internal rot that started at the very top. The decline of the Roman Empire offers a vivid, large-scale illustration. As emperors became more paranoid and tyrannical, like Commodus, the son of the philosopher king Marcus Aurelius, they systematically replaced capable administrators with flatterers and entertainers, sycophants who told them only what they wanted to hear. The results were catastrophic: political decay, economic collapse, and the eventual fall of one of history's greatest civilizations. In more recent history, Zimbabwe under Robert Mugabe suffered a similar fate. Talented economists, judges, and civil servants were pushed out, replaced by loyalists whose primary qualification was personal allegiance, not competence. The result was economic devastation and political rot that crippled a nation for a generation. The key to breaking this cycle lies in the very systems we design. While individual traits like confidence or ruthlessness play a role in who rises to power, the systems themselves ultimately determine whether competence thrives or incompetence spreads like a cancer. In environments with strong, clear feedback loops and high levels of transparency, incompetence is quickly exposed. Mistakes have visible, immediate consequences. Failure is not easily hidden behind excuses or manipulated narratives. For example, in fields like surgery or engineering, where the results of failure are immediate and often deadly, only the truly competent can survive and rise. A surgeon whose patients consistently die cannot hide behind charm. A bridge engineer whose structures consistently collapse cannot bluff his way into continued trust. Now contrast this with political and financial systems, where accountability is often weak and outcomes are murky. The collapse of the Soviet Union illustrates how centralized power, combined with opaque decision-making, allowed gross incompetence to flourish for decades. Bureaucrats, shielded from the real-world consequences of their actions, made disastrous choices without any mechanism for correction until the entire system collapsed under the weight of its own accumulated failures. Similarly, the 2008 financial crash revealed how financial leaders, incentivized by short-term profits rather than long-term stability, made reckless bets with little fear of immediate accountability. When the system finally cracked, the damage was global. In both cases, the underlying structures enabled incompetence to rise and remain unchecked. Competent systems reward honesty, transparency, and results. Broken systems reward loyalty, appearances, and short-term wins. Machiavelli understood that human nature is easily corrupted. Modern society must understand that only well-designed systems can consistently select for real competence. And without them, fools will always find their way to the throne. In the end, the uncomfortable truth remains. Power does not always belong to the wisest. It belongs to those bold enough to craft the most convincing illusions and ruthless enough to protect them. History does not just reward intelligence. It rewards certainty, simplicity, and confidence, even when they are nothing more than masks hiding deep incompetence. In a world that is psychologically and evolutionarily wired to mistake appearances for truth, your greatest defense is not blind trust, but a fiercely guarded critical thinking. Do not be seduced by the siren song of certainty. Question the surface. Look deeper. Machiavelli showed us that the game of power has never been fair, but understanding the game changes everything. It doesn't make the world less dark, but it does make you harder to deceive. And sometimes, in a world ruled by illusions, that is the first, truest step toward real, authentic power.